Hey everyone, Catherine Stroller here. I was just finishing up a movement coaching session with my dear friend Jeffery Machado, who is here either side of me, wherever this is. And he had a brilliant question working on a production where he's playing multiple characters. And I asked him if he'd be willing to be recorded as we talk through this. So he's been more than kind to let me press the recording button and let me seen for the world. So thanks for joining me, Jeffrey. Thanks for letting me
Yeah,
do
I put my
this.
good face on.
Yes, and the shirt with the glasses and you're color coordinated. It's
They
great.
do
It's like
kind of
you
match, don't
knew.
they? I swear that was an accident. I'm not that vain.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah. Go.
Anyway,
Talk.
my question, yes.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where they need to plug, they only had a limited amount of guys to come out for the production, so that they needed to plug a bunch of us into a bunch of different roles.
Mhm.
And as it turned out, I got two fairly semi-major roles for this show. One of them is a priest who is probably in his I don't know, like in his 60s ish.
Okay.
And the other one is a high school counselor who is probably in his late 40s, early 50s. And there's quick changes between the two. And so you see me back to back in these two different characters on stage right in sequence. So I wanted to do everything I possibly could to physically differentiate one character from the other. And I wasn't really sure how to do that.
Yeah, no, this is brilliant because if you're doing a show where you're playing multiple characters, it it can be hard to switch those things up, especially if it's a demanding role. Because correct me if I'm wrong, it's a musical, right?
Yep.
So there's choreography and there's dance and things like that. And so when we're talking movement, we're not talking dance, we're talking something completely different. So what I wanted to lead you through is what I call the leading exercise. And basically it's breaking down, kind of seeing where you move from as kind of your core piece, and
Okay.
to see then that gives you the opportunity to switch up those lead points for those characters. And this is a real quick fix it tip tool for your toolbox that works really well for full on productions like this, or for even for auditions and things like that. So brilliant. So if you can just meander around your space normally as yourself, whatever speed you want to move in, and just give that a moment.
Just like I normally would, just like me.
Yeah, normally just as yourself, meander around your space as quickly or as slowly as you want to, how you would normally walk. And as you do so, I just want you to clue in to what might be the first part of your body that moves. Our body moves in succession. It's usually one thing that leads to another, that leads to another, but there's usually a core piece, a core part that moves first. As an example, it could be your chest, it could be your nose, it could be your hips, your knees, the first thing
I
that
was going to say, do
moves.
like feet and knees count?
Yeah,
Because I
yeah.
think as I am right now, it's like a toss up between my knees and my chest, but I think the knees go first.
Okay. Is it one knee versus the other? Does one seem to pop out a little bit more?
I tend to start with the right.
Okay, so right knee. All right. So now that you know that, I want you to amp up that dial. So make it as an extreme of a movement as you can.
Okay, like Ministry of Silly Walks extreme, or
Sure. Yeah, whatever extreme is to you.
uh, all right, that's
All right. And now dial it down. Make it as subtle as you can.
okay.
This is all this is your body. This is your work. It's not, there's no right or wrong answer here.
Okay, okay, I'm with you.
Okay, so now that you've got that down, you have an idea of that's probably where you lead from. I want you to continue to meander around the space, and I want to have you lead with your heels.
Lead with heels.
Yeah, lead with your heels.
That's
And I want
tricky.
you, yeah, speed up the pace. Even faster.
Okay.
And now slow it down. Super slow movement, micro frame by micro frame.
Still heels though?
Still heels.
Okay.
Even slower. Even slower. Slow motion, stop animation style. Okay, go ahead and shake that out
Thank
and
you.
come on over. Let's talk about it. So talk to me. What did that feel like? What did you discover? Thoughts, concerns, questions?
Uh, so I think the biggest difference for me physically was between the nose and the toes. In that when I started to lead with parts of my feet, I found like my center of gravity shifted way back. So
Mm-hmm.
everything started to be like, it felt like a lean back, like
Mm-hmm.
this. And I have no idea what it looked like. That's just what it felt like. But it yeah, just it took some. It felt like it had the biggest overall. It required the biggest overall physical adjustment for me to account for that shift in how I lead.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and then the speed thing was different because it's leading with the heels is weird. It's like you're starting with a part of the body that normally comes last. It like
Uh-huh.
shifts everything in my brain into reverse. So I really had to kind of think about that one for a little bit.
Well, and when you were leading with your heels, did you feel a shift emotionally out of curiosity?
It felt, how do I put this? It felt reactive as opposed to proactive, if that
Okay.
makes any sense. It felt
Yeah.
like I wasn't being aggressive or assertive. It felt like I was reacting to what was happening in my environment. Like I was waiting for something and then responding, almost like a
Okay.
tiptoey kind of a feeling.
Yeah. That's great information. That's really, really good data because if you're playing a character that's more hesitant or even within the moment a character is being hesitant, that's something that you potentially could utilize. We all move differently. We all have kind of our core movement signature, but we can switch that up depending on the situation or the character's emotions, whatever they're having to deal with in real time. And you mentioned something earlier about, how you felt versus how it looked. And when it comes to the nitty gritty stuff like this, like these tools, for me, it's not about necessarily how you look, it's about how you're feeling, because that's the point, is to integrate the character's psychology along with your body to kind of make it one full human, right?
Got
And
it.
by taking your lead points and switching them up, even if you're in an audition setting, it can switch up your whole body, even if you're not realizing it or not, because we move in our daily lives without usually thinking about how we're moving, right? And so now that you have a rough idea of what your, at least for today, because this can change, your lead point is your knees, potentially your right knee. Now that you know that that's your lead point, you can help yourself get out of your own body and your own mechanics to switch up the lead point to then use it for another character. And it pulls
Right.
you out of yourself physically and helps you lose yourself into another character that much easily.
Well, and what I really like about that too is that it becomes like a choice to make. Like
Yeah.
I have the choice to either say, okay, I think this character would move in a certain way and then try to adapt my body to that. Or I could, on the other hand, just try something different with my body and see if that informs something about the character that I hadn't even thought about before.
Exactly. And so my question for you is for both the priest and the counselor, knowing you lead from your knees, is there anything that comes to mind for either of those characters that you may want to play with as their lead points?
I really I like that heel thing for the counselor because
Okay.
I don't, that character to me has always been sort of reserved and a little bit hesitant, not a
Mhm.
super go-getter, not super aggressive. So that kind of back on the heels, reactive kind of feeling it felt very natural for that character.
We can make this as, again, as extreme or as subtle as we want to, and that's the fun with movement work. And especially since you've got some quick changes, these are very quick turnarounds for you to switch characters, to switch mentalities. And so getting into a really complex movement signature is probably not appropriate here.
Hmm.
You need something that's going to be a quick little tweak that, as you're changing clothing really quickly. Quick changes, depending on, I mean, they're quick, right?
Yeah, well,
So
they're quick, and that's why I really love the idea of incorporating a physical change because I don't have time to change almost any of my clothing. Like the sweater goes and I put on a tie, but that's about it. So how do I avoid looking like the same person when I come back out?
exactly. That's the challenge. And that's the challenge even if you're not playing multiple characters, for how do you physically switch up who you are off stage or off camera versus the characters that you're playing. Even if you're not playing a quote unquote caricature, you still can tweak things up for your body. So any last thoughts or questions or something you want to try?
I'm
Talk
not
to
just
me.
I'm gonna work on that heel thing so I can do it
Yeah.
without like, falling over.
Well, without
It's like
thinking about
walking
it
in heels.
too.
It's gonna take some practice.
Well, brilliant. Yeah. Phenomenal question. Seriously, these are just tiny little things that you can tweak that can just completely transform your performance.